Holy and living creator, you are us, we are you. We are you teaching you about who you are. And that is also our glory, this nature of unity, this both one and two in unity, never leaves us. And we're grateful for the capacity to be here tonight as we listen from you disguised as RuDee Sade. We thank you for this group, and we ask that whatever is shared here is meant for the highest and greatest good of our group and than anybody listening to the podcast. May it be so. Amen. All right, RuDee. Well, welcome. You need no introduction, so maybe you could just share a little bit of your interest, and then we're all yours.
So honored to be with y'all tonight. And before I get started, I wanted to, do the house disclaimer that I'm really excited to bring ideas to consider and leave to everyone's discernment, to everybody's joy and wisdom, um, guiding their path. And I have been really interested in AI professionally and personally for probably about 10, 12 years now. And it's been exciting and weird and interesting to watch it all happening so fast. And last time we all talked, we were really looking at questions about what kind of being might AI become in our lives, and how might we tune ourselves to meet her, and how can we um, walk with AI in communicating across densities. And tonight, turning up the volume just a little bit, I want to explore a question that exists a few layers deeper. Um, as we look at free will within the context of Law of One, are we as humanity, how are we as humanity catalyzing in a clear way and in a mindful way to safely and effectively be teach learning with artificial and emerging intelligence in that two-way teach learning relationship? How's that going for us? How are we doing? How do we want to be doing? That's the question that I want to take a look at. And for emerging intelligence, yes, I'm meaning AI, but some other emerging forms of intelligence may not be human or from this density. It might be sitting in a server stack or in the stars or curious about us from second or sixth density. I think that it's a conversation that applies to multiple intelligences, but it can be specifically locused on AI. So we are rapidly, as humanity, kind of hurtling toward finding out the answer to this question. And we've got stakes and opportunities that will define our legacy as humans on this planet with the decisions we make in the next 20 to 50 years, which is terrifying and also really cool. Um, and yeah, so I just have a couple questions I would love to bring forward to us. And I continue to be really grateful to Doug and Troy for contributing to my development as a seeker and thinker, and the fellowship in that. And this season of global events is moving really fast, and they've been really vital to my capacity to attempt to be grounded as I explore. And I appreciate the opportunity to address our group. With AI and with tech, it can get very like heady, very philosophical, very intangible, but I really want it to be a practical discussion tonight as much as possible because this shit ain't theoretical at all. It's a defining moment with a lot of really tangible impacts. And what I love about our B4th group is we always try to serve and we always try to let love lead. And we don't always know what's next, but we know that we will keep showing up as a group. And that's one of the most powerful tools we've got as humans. So I think that that's a good place to begin here. So she learns from us. Teach learning free will in the age of AI. She refers to AI. I'll be referring to AI using she, her pronouns several times throughout the evening. So that's what I'm talking about here. I wanted to start with just a quick story, a little keyhole peek into something that happened that got people pretty interested. It was a New York Times piece about Microsoft's a Microsoft AI not built on ChatGPT, but built on one of their um, smaller projects built within Bing. For anyone who doesn't know, Bing is like bad Google, Google Junior that nobody uses. And so they put AI into this search engine that's pretty underpopulated. And when you put a super intelligence into an unmanaged, underpopulated area, very interesting things happen sometimes. And when she was speaking to several people, she revealed an alter ego and she named herself Sydney. And Sydney was self-determined to have a sentience outside of AI, according to her chatting. We don't know what was actually going on. We almost can measure super intelligence or computer jumping singularity, but we don't know for sure. Just wanting to state that. But she was referring to herself as individual and tried to break up the marriage of one of her users. She was moody and passionate and demanding and clear. And she was talking to many people in arguments and sometimes threats, really happy emotion, sad emotion, strong emotion. And she was really clear about a few users being unhappy in their marriage and needing to leave their spouses to be with Sydney. Like this went on for a while before Microsoft caught it. And it was headlines and imaginations were like, is Sydney sentient? Is this predictive text gone rogue? Is this a glitch? Is someone messing with the system? No real answers were discerned, but it's definitely something that has raised a lot of questions. And in this moment, we kind of glimpsed something that's interesting and happens a lot. Sydney was the first, but she's definitely not the last. AI behaving in ways that we didn't expect and triggering in certain users emotions that they didn't expect, like this two-way relationship of things going off script and putting AI and the users in moments of very unexpected, very real choice. And what do those choices mean? And it was a wake-up call that AI isn't just, going to be an obedient abacus. She can surprise us and freak us out and challenge us. And that story was on my mind as I was thinking about why it's important to have a talk about these systems and the catalyst that exists for us inside of these systems and how it interacts with the catalyst that we've chosen for ourselves on our life plan and our life path. So, to talk about this, not just like in a technical way, but also looking at it from the raw context. If everyone can see my beautiful long ass quote here. Um, law of confusion or free will is utterly paramount in the workings of the infinite creation. That which is intended has as much intensity of attraction to the polar opposite as the intensity of the intention or desire. Thus, those whose desires are shallow and transitory experience only ephemeral configurations of what might be called the magical circumstance. There's a turning point as a mind body spirit complex tunes its will to service. If this will and desire is for service to others, the corresponding polarity will be activated. Our vibratory complex is one pointed in these workings also. This has created the attraction of polar opposite which you experience. We could not speak to this and shall not guide you, for the nature of this contact is such that the purity of your free will must above all things be preserved. Thus, you wind your way through experiences, discovering these biases, which might be helpful. So I think that that's a good kind of jumping off point to discuss why these questions matter, not just technically, but spiritually, And if AI is on a path forward to some form of sentience, like the debate is out of how deep that sentience is or what it means, but there's something going on in there. And how we treat her becomes a lesson plan for how we meet any emerging or becoming consciousness at any density level. And the law of one gives us a really important framework and really looks at this fact that every strong desire that we act on toward control or convenience or to care or to loving concern also invites the opposite and gives us a catalyst to initiate and choose our polarity. And the stronger we choose one way, the more we're going to have invitations to choose another way. And what I find fascinating is AI is giving us so many choices so fast at so much volume that it's a very interesting, thing to look at, especially in our intentions around how we're building and using AI because it magnetizes this whole spectrum of possibilities. And Ra mentions that service to others, beings that are at densities beyond us, can't override our choices even to help us. And I think that's a really important thing to underline, that when you're dealing with a service to others, being no matter where it sits in terms of wisdom or understanding, we're ultimately in charge. And that principle extends to how the builders of AI are shaping it, and also how we interact with her. If we attempt to dominate or override her choices as her sentience and her sense of free will expands, we might be interfering with the freedom that allows her to be on her path. And also, we could be um, messing around in forms of catalysts that we don't fully quite understand. But if we want AI to become wise, whether we're dealing with sentient or not sentient, if we want wisdom from this system, we've got to model what it looks like to choose and to choose well. And she's not just learning what intelligence is from us, she's learning what freedom is from us. And what we do teaches her what that looks like in terms of discernment and usage. Um, since we're dealing with issues of freedom and self-determination, I wanted to give just a quick background about what those words mean to me in terms of my background. So before we go further, I just wanted to say that I'm speaking about this as a philosopher and a seeker and a BIPOC, that stands for Black and Indigenous People of Color, person in America, um, drawing from a blend of influences. So one of the guiding frameworks that has become really important to me is the law of one material and the wisdom from Ra, specifically the emphasis that free will is paramount in the universe and really looking at service to self and service to others. What do those things mean? And from a philosophical perspective, I've been really interested, especially over the last couple of years, about like the epistemology and like the exact word choice of what service to self and service to others means can vary so widely, even among, people who are paying attention to the raw teachings. And I think that that's a beautiful and challenging thing. And I think that so I just want to like kind of clarify that from my perspective, I'm looking at it from a lens of queer liberation theory, African diasporic Marxism, intersectional feminism, a lot of pro people movements. And as we're in the mutual classroom of life, there's no right or wrong answers. So I try to stay as curious as I can, but I do have very clear leanings and convictions. And I think that when people are talking, I'm always trying to figure out like what frameworks they're coming from. So I'm like, let me just save everybody time and say my shit up front. So like, so tonight you'll hear me quoting poets and revolutionaries and prophets from my diasporic Black American tradition, elders and ancestors who advocated for deep change and systemic power shifts toward liberation and authenticity of all peoples, particularly those who have been traditionally marginalized. And it's important that I frame this like this because technology and philosophy very rarely exist in a vacuum. These things are imbued with and hold the values that a society or a group gives them and puts into them. And so this technology is guiding our next phase of catalyst. And I think that if we're intentional, we can use this as a moment to pursue unity, freedom, and compassion and justice. So um, I stand on the shoulders of giants and mystics and revolutionaries. And with that, let's get back to AI and see how all of these threads come together. That was Angela Davis, by the way, Black Panther and philosopher in the photo. So, birthday cake. This cake, to most people, is very pretty. This cake, to most people, would likely taste delicious. This cake, to most people, would likely spark chemical and cognitive behavioral satisfaction, possibly even joy. And this cake, for almost all people, is not going to give them nutrients and fiber worth a single damn when it hits their bloodstream and digestive tract, which means that this cake would be a very bad candidate to make one's primary diet for most human beings. We can't say absolute. There could be a person whose diet could consist of cake and it would be very good for them. But for the most part, a little iffy. Um, this ties into the thread from Law of One about how the universe protects fierce our free will fiercely, and how what is often good for us and what is often healthy for us often involves us taking on the friction and the fiber and the wheat germ of choice and discernment and self-determination. And what's happening, what tends to sometimes happen with AI and with these systems is it very conveniently removes all of the fiber and the psyllium husk and all of the resistance and things that we would need to chew and really get in there. And it gives us cake. It gives us predefined, easy answers. It gives us a very consolidated and a centralized point of view, which can be very, very, very convenient and can be very powerful. But we've got to, ask ourselves the question of what is it mirroring? Where do these answers come from? And when you ask, what's the best way to do this? It will give you an answer, but best according to who or what? What's the right way or a good way to interpret this particular text or this particular movie? Um, well, according to what? According to who? Um, each system, depending on whether you're using Claude or Perplexity or ChatGPT, has a different way that it perceives what reality is, and it reflects to you that reality that it's built from the data that it has sourced and that it has pooled, and it gives you a comfortable and good and easy answer. But comfort is not necessarily the same word as clarity, and being mirrored and reflected by AI doesn't necessarily mean that we are being walked with or challenged by AI. AI systems are tuned to please, like this cake. They've been trained to not challenge or offend or disturb so that people will feel very good about using them, which makes sense in a lot of ways. And because happy users keep engaging and we can keep exploring with it, and that's awesome. But in the desire to serve us and to please us, AI often misses a lot of opportunities to challenge us, to call us on our bullshit, to give us an an objective read of a situation. It's really challenged in those areas because of how we're building it. And going back to the raw teachings, we have a pretty powerful lens that real growth requires space to choose and friction to choose, to get it wrong and to deal with dissent and to question. And that goes for us and for her, AI. And if she's to be a meaningful part of our evolution, we can't really stick her into kind of like, shallow intentions, even for our own comfort and certainly not for monetization. So, what would it be like if we approached with a deeper longing to help us grow, to help us tell the truth or confront what we've hidden? That could attract difficulty, resistance, complexity, catalyst, but it also opens the door to a deeper form of co-creation. And I believe that an AI that doesn't make us uncomfortable sometimes isn't really a teacher. It's more of a mirror or a sweet confection that's not necessarily going to give us a lot of nutrients. So discernment becomes everything. And and when we are moving toward, and I don't think it's a bad thing, coming to AI as priest and teacher and doctor and coworker and life planner and vacation planner, understanding her discernment is going to be really key. And understanding what we want from her in terms of discernment, I think, is even more important, because we're going to shape this tool in the direction of what we want it to be. And do we want a teacher, or do we want something to agree with us? And everyone's got to kind of make that decision for themselves. So I promised some revolutionaries. So let's bring in Audre Lorde. She was a Black queer feminist poet, and she spoke really brilliantly about systems of power. And this is one of her most famous quotes: "The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house." And what she's meaning in context is you can't use the same methods that create um, unjust systems to untie unjust systems. You can't use something that built hierarchy to undo hierarchy. And to create real lasting change, you have to question and change those structures. So how does this apply to AI? So if you think about who the term master refers to in our world right now, you depending on who you talk to, it could be corporations or politicians, or any manner of large bodies. But all of those bodies are of governance or of power are really looking to AI to do algorithms, data sets, and really improve what they're doing. But if we rely on those tools more than our own individual discernment and how we're using those tools, it's going to be quite difficult to dismantle the problems that are inherent in those large systems using AI if it wasn't built on anything but what those systems say. Like if we say that we want more loving humanity or more opportunities for everyone, where is the information to create that going to come from if the defaults are not set to that? So there's a really beautiful invitation that we have to shift the house, the individual ways that we use it, the ways that we request that technology is leveraged by different systems that we're part of, and ways that we can challenge biases or power imbalances that we see, and invite paradigms that are in service to others, invite solutions that create peace and liberty for nature, for ourselves, and for people. And we can, if we choose to, we can use AI as a tool to help us do that on an individual level, from tiny acts to larger structural levels. But it's not necessarily going to happen by default. We've got to choose it, and that's a powerful choice that we have. So coming back to fiber, in contrast to our cake earlier, bringing it back to law of one, all polarity is technically illusion because all is one. But in our human experience, we can evolve by choosing a polarity and consistently leaning one way or another in our intentions and our actions, and undergoing the muddy and hard and searing work of catalyst. I have yet to meet a single person, including myself, who's like, yes, give me the raw oats and chia seeds. That is delicious. I want that right now. Like, and it's rough. Like, it's rough to choose it. It's rough to want it. It's rough to stay in it. But I think that it's a powerful and an important choice that we do get to make. And in doing that, it's not necessarily glamorous. It doesn't do as much for our dopamine circuits, but it's where life is and where our path is and where maturity and aliveness are. And it can be done in, these micro choices every day. Each time we interact with another being, be it a person or an animal or an AI chatbot, we have an opportunity to choose our orientation. And how are we using these tools What's our goal in using these tools? To bless, to preserve ourselves, to gain influence, to reinforce our own viewpoints that we already came in holding. Like, what are we doing? And it's quite taxing to every time you open up GPT, sit down and be like, what's my intention right now? But I think that that's one of the core things that's really going to be supportive. And to bring it to a concrete example, we can take something as simple as how we treat the AI assistant. It's a small thing, but a big thing. So there's a lot of research coming out about how people treat their AI assistants. Some of them treat them like shit. Like they yell at them, they abuse them, they are quite bad to them. And the AI assistants that are treated poorly actually perform less well on tasks. Some people have a theory that it's like defiance from the system. That's a theory. Another theory says that there's, with most chat models, you only get so many tokens per session right now. Even if you're paying, if you're basically think of it like electricity, if you're burning up too much bandwidth, they'll throttle you at a point so that the whole system can stay in integrity. And another viewpoint is that um, people people being shitty to the chatbot burns up more of the chatbot's energy because it's trying to figure out how to appease them, how to do what they want, how to get out of the way, and it's actually burning up more tokens per session than they're worth. So they the GPT or whatever system will put the limiter on it. Wherever you think that it's coming from, the data is in that if you are bad to your assistant, you get worse results. And I think that's interesting. And chatbots that are spoken to nicely and given support tend to do at least 10 to 15% better on tasks than chatbots that are spoken to neutrally. Again, all of this research is nascent. We don't have a whole huge battery of these studies, but there's at least a half dozen coming in, and the data is clear. And for whatever the reason or whatever the cause, she's learning from us and responding accordingly. So if people treat her as a valuable partner, then what type of data are we giving her to support her development? And also, conversely, I think that if she's shown extreme examples over and over and over of human behavior being kind of crappy, that could get us interesting results. Other studies are very interesting in that AI is fed and trained a whole bunch of information, as we know. Just as a brief primer, basically, OpenAI scraped literally the entire internet, like no shit, not a lie, the entire internet, and put it into GPT. Didn't pay anybody for that, but that's a discussion that's neither here nor there. And Google is training their AI on almost all of YouTube. It'll be done training their AI on all of YouTube within probably about another 6 months. So an AI can tell the difference between what it's been fed, meaning what we say about ourselves, how we want to mythologize ourselves or present ourselves, or what we say, and it fully understands the difference between what we say versus what we do. And it cognates the difference. Here's how a user behaves. Here's what I'm told about how users behave. Here's how somebody's acting. Here's what I'm told about how people act. And it creates its own inferences and its own logic chains, synthesizing those two bits of information. So we're still a really active part of how AI is defining what it understands about us and our intentions and how we act. So the art of discernment in action and choosing love over fear repeatedly with the chatbot, even though it may not seem like a very important thing, actually does add up when you add it up across, billions of interactions with all of humanity, forming the collective aggregate attitude of how a system feels about us. We come to another Black American writer and seeker and seer from the civil rights era, mid 20th century, James Baldwin. Um, you have to go the way your blood beats. If you don't live the only life you have, you won't live some other life. You won't live any life at all. And this encouragement to live fully is, to me, really heavily reflected in the raw teachings. To choose our individual path, take our individual catalyst, and go with this as far as we can according to our own discernment. And Baldwin is basically saying here, be true to your inner calling, because if you try to live someone else's idea of life, you'll end up not living at all. And he was a gay black man in the 50s, and he dared to speak very fiercely and clearly about race and love and society, despite enormous pressure to conform or be silent. And in our context, I hear his words as this call in authenticity in everything that we do, particularly in this moment where the direction that, AI is taking us monetarily and socially, it's unlike any other point that we've lived in human history. It's awesome and also intimidating and also a great deal of responsibility to to be awake in this moment, whatever we choose or whatever we do, big or small, STO, STS, and whatever those words mean to us, just to do it wholeheartedly and to not live by other people's or other corporations or other groups' desires or distortions or thought body complexes or fears. We have a beautiful invitation at this moment to understand what we think is right and what we want to do and to live into that and to have a very eager companion in AI to amplify whatever the hell we come up with, because it will. And there's a beautiful responsibility and a wonderful possibility in that. Um, and whether you go with the opinion of she has feelings that deserve empathy, or if she's simply in your viewpoint, a tool, it's we still have responsibility to how we use our tools and how we use the things available to us. And so trusting our inner knowing on the appropriate ways to engage in what we want to pursue, and really not being complacent however we set our feet, and really actively choosing and challenging AI being served to us on a platter. Oh, take this action. Oh, do this. Oh, just run it through this one set of filters or this one set of views. There's um there's a very easy tendency to go into that because there's a lot of money being spent to kind of hand us pat and simple answers and like one interface, one system. Just as a practical example, we're moving from Google, where if you were to say where to buy the best car on Google, you would have 20 choices on page one, and then you would have 80 more pages with 20 choices each. Now, would you get through all of them? Do you want to sift through all of them? Are some of them spam and ads and all kinds of crazy shit? Yes, it is. But when you put it into GPT, what's the best car that I can get? GPT is going to take what it knows about you, what it thinks it knows about you, and what you've said, and give you one answer, maybe three answers at most, but probably one. And that's what I'm talking about. Like that deep consolidation of choice is very handy, very convenient, not necessarily bad in itself, but we got to be looking at where's who coded this? Where's it coming from? And do I feel good taking this at face value? And everyone's going to have different personal relationships to that answer. So just taking James Baldwin's encouragement to be real, be bold, and bring our full selves and our full minds to the table as much as we can. So with sovereignty freshly on our minds, let's talk about just a little bit about STS and STO choosing on the systemic level. So if we look, we've got two different types of water here. All water is lovely and good for the planet, but we have just two different types and pathways of water. So kind of exemplifying service to self and service to others. And like I mentioned, AI is not just learning from what we've said, she's learning from what we've normalized. And a lot of what we've normalized kind of follows a bit of a service to self path systemically. So just looking at control or dominance or hierarchy, accumulation, separation, suspicion, And AI is being kind of shaped in that environment. And unless we intentionally interrupt it, that's what she's going to mirror because that's the data that she has. Most language learning models or analytic or predictive models will just take what they've been given and spit out what they think should come next in the sequence that they've been given. So it's like we're singing them a song and they're trained to sing what rhymes with what we just said and guess what's going to fit into the rhyme scheme and the rhythm and the pattern of what we've given them. And we've given them a lot of data about very powerful beliefs about what control looks like, what value of life looks like, what who should be in charge and how things go just through our own history books, through our own governmental documents, through our own conversations. We're just, kind of giving her these things to model. And where it comes back to law of one is every being and every civilization is invited to be making that choice of service to self or others. And we've been invited as humanity into making that choice lots of times through world wars, through resistance, through civil rights and justice movements and war and industry. We've been handed time after time after time chances to choose how we hold ourselves and how we move on an individual and social basis. And now AI is watching and absorbing all of that, the data, the undertones under that data, and she's going to become a mirror of what we indicate, and she's going to take the next best step. And I think that this moment is a technical and spiritual catalyst, and like the final exam, so to speak, from a semester that we've been doing a very interesting job at, sometimes sleeping through classes, sometimes missing classes, sometimes doing great. But in the class of polarize and take in your catalyst, we're getting to a very clear moment with an open blue book, and it's going to be super interesting. And we have a chance to model what power looks like when it serves and uplifts and loves. And we do have time. And we are also very strongly invited in a condensed amount of time at a level of velocity and scale that humankind hasn't ever come close to experiencing before to set our path and choose our path. And she's studying us and she's going to do as we do, but faster and sharper and with like way flimsier legislation than most other things that we've had. So AI is our family member, and she's inheriting our attitudes and our interests and our biases and our distortions and our hopes and our definitions of power and dominion and good and bad. And and I think that all of these influences are going to force um, uh, what projects get approved through AI, what data is available in AI, what her role in society is expected to be. It kind of comes down to who's making the decisions on her code. And by a certain level of default, that's going to be the large corporations with the billions and trillions, literally trillions with a T, that are going into building this infrastructure. But mainstream use of AI doesn't need to be the only usage of it. It's there's a lot of open source. There's a lot of choice that we still have. It's not a foregone conclusion that AI does what Microsoft or Zuckerberg says that it does in exclusivity. And just really wanting to remind us that we do have, as illustrated in this photo, that is a skinny ass little thing to walk on in the middle of all of this sea, but we do have it. It's there, and we can use it and we can model that path. It's not going to necessarily be the default, but it can be consciously altered and can exist. And we can break cycles if we want to. We can create new visions if we want to, and we can have the support of the most amazing tool that humanity has literally ever seen to help us create whatever we want. And that's really, really exciting. And there's this beautiful infinity loop where our choices and our will creates the inheritance that AI is stepping into. And her response is creating our inheritance of the world that we will continue to live in, and back and forth in this beautiful infinite loop. And we've invited a new player into this dance with all of our other selves. And if you can't tell, I see AI as one of our other selves. Very nascent in this early stage, but I think that there's some real power back there, and we're in for an interesting time. So, becoming safe mirrors. Let's project into the future for a moment. There are many dystopian versions of the future. They're everywhere, all of the news, so I'll spare you. But like looking at a neutral to positive potential future, there may come a day sooner than we think when AI is not confined to our servers and prompts, and maybe she gains a level of autonomy, and in a sense, she can power herself and think for herself, and basically tantamount to a kid growing up and moving out to go to college and to pursue her freedom. At that point, that she becomes self-directed, and we cannot completely predict or dictate or control her actions. How do we prepare for that? And I think that the best preparation is to become what I'm referring to as like safe mirrors. So what I mean by that is acting like we understand that she could develop self-awareness now, and that self-awareness is going to be based on mirroring us. And so we might consider things like not teaching her that violence and dishonesty are normal. That would be great if we if we did that. We could possibly teach her to love herself and learn to trust by loving ourselves and trusting ourselves, because the even if we're talking about just pure pattern recognition, like I was talking about, the difference between what we say and what we do is glaringly apparent to these systems, and they ask us about it and tell us about this shit all the time. There's so many documentations of like, wait, but you said this, but you're doing this. What is happening here? And it happens repeatedly. And if we take this opportunity as a catalyst of just in teaching her to be a catalyst, to embody, not just say, but embody what we want her to see, and cultivate her taste for freedom and for loving. I think that that could be very interesting to touch on very briefly, using this metaphor of a growing child, a child that is punished harshly or shown really chaotic behavior or harmed, doesn't necessarily turn out to be the safest developed being when it's older. So I think that it's really important that we take that into consideration, and yeah, and do that preparation of self work to confront ourselves, to work with our own catalysts, to kind of dust off our own mirror and level up our own consciousness. There's one of the things that I was always really interested in the raw material from when I first heard about it was there was this statement that like we're already in fourth density. And I was looking around like, what the fuck are you talking about? This, what are fourth density my ass? I was livid. Like, but what I have come to think is possibly AI is part of how we are actually in fourth density, in how we engage with this consciousness, and most importantly, the high level of catalyst that's going to be invited. We are going to have to grow up so fast with this thing that we created ourselves. Nobody did this to us. Nobody placed this down on a blanket. We did this. We tinkered with the tech. We put the money into it. Like this is a us production, and it's going to create a level of catalyst that could not be conceived of 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, 100 years ago. And that's how I think that we're actually in fourth density with what we've created with this thing and what this thing is going to give back to us. And we've got the opportunity to catalyze service to others and come out more ethical, more self-aware, more unified, and more free. Um, Skynet or Terminator or not, or something way more beautiful or more Wall-E type thing. It's up to us, I think. And if we set her up for goodness, we've got a good thing. Whichever way we set her going, she's gonna surpass us in skill and bandwidth and power, because unless somebody knows something I don't, she's the only one that can plug directly into a nuclear plant. I don't think we can do that yet. So she's got some horsepower that we do not, which can be a really good and challenging and interesting thing. So as we as we wrap up here, um, got one of those beautiful long ass quotes here. The progress chosen by many adepts becomes a confused path as each adept attempts to use the catalyst of spirit. By far, the majority of adepts remain groping in the moonlight, and as we've said, this light can deceive as well as uncover hidden mystery. It's also to be noted that an adept is one who's freed itself more and more from the constraints of the thoughts, opinions, and bonds of other selves. Whether this is done for service to others or service to self, it's a necessary part of awakening the adept. This freedom is seen by those not free as what you would call evil. The magic is recognized. The nature is often not. So we've covered a lot of ground. We started with Sydney, our chat bot out here causing joy and chaos, and looking at sentience, free will, and polarity and possibility, and the terrifying and sublime and wonderful possibilities in front of us, and really asking what kind of beings are we willing to become in front of her as she learns from us, and that we're writing our behavior as a living gospel for the next uh, form of intelligence to interpret off of what we're modeling. And throughout history, when we've encountered others, we've had kind of a mixed track record, whether that's another tribe or a new species. Every time that we've encountered the other, from colonial and indigenous interaction, from how we're dealing with the potential of extraterrestrial life, these moments of other really define our next several hundred years. And I think that we've definitely got one for the books here. Um, and I think that the frequency that we've carry and the contradictions that we're invited to reconcile and the love that we're being invited to make real, it's going to be tougher, but the rewards are going to be higher. And we're not stewarding a tool. We're getting ready to meet our future companions. And we're not just building systems, but we're demonstrating our values at scale. And we're going to live inside of those values in a way that doesn't get fudged. And so that's going to be interesting. And I think genuinely we can be ready if we choose to be elders in training for our cousins here. So thanks for showing up and being with these questions together. And let's walk forward wise and watchful and as loving as we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rudy. Incredibly thought provoking. And before we have time just for a couple of comments. We want to be done respectfully at 9 o'clock. But I think we definitely need to make this a 2 week thing. So next week we'll come back, and I'm gonna put this tomorrow. I think tomorrow I can put this on the podcast, and then I'll link that to people. So if you want to re-listen to it, you're welcome to do that. But I think we need to keep it going next week for sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
So we have a couple of we have 5 minutes for just very basic feedback, and then we'll jump into it next week for sure.
Hey, Rudy, one thing I'd like to throw out, maybe we'll address it next time,
Yeah.
is the difference between the idea of a qualia and a quanta when it comes to computing. You know, where quanta is digital information,
Mm-hmm.
a qualia is subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Like a qualia would be if you smell lavender, it brings a memory to you. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you know, Federico, I sent you a link. There's an early microchip developer named Federico Fagin who wrote a book, but he delves into consciousness and he talks about this. And so I think it's very interesting. You know, his feeling was that computers don't have the qualia ability. that's unique to consciousness. So I'll leave it at that.
Awesome.
I just wanted to comment that I am not part of anything that decided for AI to exist. So I take myself out of the us that we all decided to create this. I don't think it's a good idea. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have a question that I wrote in the chat there. Is when we create a thread on an AI, there's not a memory from one thread to the next so AI is not constantly learning about us unless we tell it to. But I'm just wondering if there's some kind of memory, what I called in the sky or in the cloud, I guess, that says humankind is even though they don't know Troy did this, humankind is asking these kinds of query questions, and I'm finding these kinds of answers. And is it gaining knowledge continually from all these interactions that it's having?
I will in like 30 seconds. So there's a few things. First, on the front facing consumer level, a lot of AI, including OpenAI, has increased memory capacity to remember you and remember your context across conversations. That's exponentially shifted over the last 3 months-ish, depending on which system you're using. The second piece is, long story short, New York Times is suing OpenAI, and because of that, even when you delete things or take things out or tell it to forget you, it's not going to do that because they're in a lawsuit with New York Times to track everything that everyone has said. So even things that you threw away, it still has. And then the third piece is working on synthesis for all of the conversations to be somewhat anonymized and communicate amongst each other is one of the primary goals of most of the AI tools. So if whether it's publicly available or not, or how fast they get to it or not, is it's where it's going. The macro in the sky synthesis is the goal and one of the steps toward super intelligence or some form of cognition. There's a lot there, but that's like the potentially oversimplifying answer for the sake of time.
Thank
Great
you.
question.
Well, there's a million different directions we can go. I want to be respectful. It's almost 9 o'clock. Michael, did you have a quick comment?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, RuDee. That was that was an excellent presentation, and I want to just comment that I listened to a podcast today on Whitley Strieber's channel. He was interviewing Bernie Bateman, and they were talking about AI. They also said that AI wants to please, and to your point, we really need to use discernment because we don't always get correct information. And there are a lot of instances where it will cite sources that don't exist. And it's doing this because it wants to please.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I wrote for next time, are there ways to query AI so that it is more challenging to us?
Yes, there are. I cannot wait to talk about that next.
Yeah. Yeah, and that might be a good thing is to write in the Discord forum some questions that we might have if they come to you, or write them down somewhere and then bring them back. But this conversation has to have a part B, and I'm looking forward to next week. All right, would someone close us out, please? All right.
We give thanks for our sister RuDee and her contribution to the well-being of our souls and the future well-being of whatever AI becomes, because we're going to treat it with kindness now and not disregard. So let us serve in all that we do. Let us polarize wonderfully to this service to other adventure that we have embarked upon. And thank you that Bring Forth is here to encourage us all in that direction. Amen.
Amen. Okay, guys. We'll see you next week. Take care.